Winch Claw, one of the most controversial specializations in the finals. If you played the game enough, you've seen it, maybe you've been killed by it, or maybe you've used it yourself. But there's something I want to touch on that I feel like everyone in the finals community has been saying about Winch. It's broken, there's no counter to it, it's a free kill, it's no skill, and it needs to get nerfed into oblivion. I want to make an argument for the Winch Claw and address some of these points because I think there's a difference between something being frustrating to play against and something being actually unhealthy for the game. The first point I want to touch on is that Winch Claw is a free kill, and it should not be like that. It's almost like a more evil stun gun. But I think we need to take a step back and look at the Winch Claw as a whole. What does it do? What is it made for? The Winch Claw has a few main uses. You get one winch that can either pull an object toward you, with cash out stations being the most popular example of the non-lethal utility it offers, even though I've definitely snagged a couple goo canisters in my life. The other main use is obviously pulling your opponents toward you. The further away you pull them from, the longer the stun lasts. Now, with all this in mind, I think we need to understand what Winch Claw is designed for. It is a piece of utility meant to disrupt fights. It is meant to pull someone out of position and create an opportunity for your team or yourself. In past seasons, it was able to bypass Dome Shield and Mesh Shield, but they recently removed that feature. I'll touch on that a little bit more later. But I think because of these changes, I don't think Winch Claw is just a free kill every single time, because you actually have to hit the Winch Claw. They've already reduced the range on it slightly, and like I mentioned earlier, it can no longer go through shields. And with Heavy being a meta pick, in pretty much every team comp, you are going to run into Dome Shield and Mesh Shield a lot of the time. Now, unless your light has a glitch nade, or God forbid your medium has a glitch trap, you can pretty easily find yourself in a stalemate with a shield. That really slows down the gameplay and creates more poking, which I personally think is less fun. Now, does the Winch Claw excel at what it's supposed to do? 100%. If you get close, land the winch, especially if you have SA, Shaq, Lewis, whatever, you can absolutely change the tide of the fight. But I think it's healthy because it promotes a different, more faster, aggressive play style. And to me, that feels more like the finals. Now, on the point that the Winch Claw is a no-skill specialization, I'll concede that it's not exactly rocket science to use. You press the button, throw the winch, but there still is some skill involved because you really only have one opportunity to use it in a fight. If you miss your winch, you're pretty much cooked. If you're fighting the Heavy with Mesh or Dome, and you throw your winch into that, bye-bye opportunities. Now, compare that to Mesh Shield, which I would say is probably the second most or first most popular pick for Heavy. It has a lot more forgiveness. You can pull it out, put it away, bring it back out a couple times before it completely runs out. It covers a wide area, and can be useful in a lot of different situations. So while Winch Claw might not be as complicated to use as something like Goo Gun, compared to other heavy picks, I don't think it's necessarily a no-skill free win button. Another major complaint that people have is the stun. People say once you get winched, you're basically fried and there's nothing you can do. I do understand that argument because losing control of your character is frustrating. Trust me, I've been winched more than I'd like to admit, and getting instantly deleted is not the funnest thing in the world. But I don't think there's absolutely no counterplay to it. For medium, they have Shockwave, which was added, season 10, pretty recently, and that gives a reliable way to create distance. You can Shockwave away from the heavy, or you can send them away from you. They also have Goonade, which you throw that down at your feet after you get winched, creates enough time to get away, to either jump pad out of there or zipline, but I say that loosely because zipline is not the best. Jump pad supremacy around here. And even as a heavy player, I personally have had to throw down a couple sneaky Goonades to avoid getting turned into coins by a sledgehammer. Now what about Light, I hear you ask? Light is definitely more vulnerable because they're a lot squishier, but they have the best mobility in the game. And putting aside movement speed, like base movement speed, because when you get winched, you can't exactly run away. That's not really a viable option. The Light has dash, which I'm sure if you've played the game before, you know how frustrating it can be when a Light dashes completely out of range and resets the engagement. They also have grapple, which you can, Spider-Man your way out of there. They too have Goonades, and if you're a madman, maybe even a gateway could potentially get you out of that situation. Another point I think is interesting is how people react to Winch Claw compared to other abilities. I feel like a lot of people complain about Winch because of the stun and the feeling of not being able to move, being constricted. But then you have something like the Goo Gun, which yes, I know it's been nerfed, fly high, goo stalls. But as someone who has played against some really good Goo Gun players, I would honestly argue that getting trapped by goo, being non-stop stalled by it, is infinitely more frustrating than being winched. And this kind of ties in to the point that I think people judge abilities differently depending on whether or not they enjoy fighting against them. Which kind of brings me into a more overarching point. People criticizing a playstyle that they do not personally enjoy. The finals is at its best when there are different ways to play, different specializations, create different experiences, and that is what keeps people coming back. I know it's worked for me. Now, I'm not saying everyone has to love Winch Claw. If you enjoy playing a more slower defensive style, mesh, heal ball, barricades, C4, M60, or other setups, that's more power to you. That is how the game is meant to be played. But personally, I enjoy being aggressive. I like gaining the fights quickly and forcing engagements. I don't want every match to become the same slow defensive setup where everyone sits back and just pokes forever. I think the finals is special because people can play the game differently. I don't want every player running the same build, but I also don't want every playstyle that is effective to get removed because some people find it frustrating. At the end of the day, Winch is strong, and that's part of what makes it fun. But being strong does not automatically mean it needs another nerf and it's unhealthy for the game. It has counters, weaknesses, and it creates a unique, aggressive playstyle that adds something to the finals. If we keep nerfing things just because they're frustrating to fight against, we will eventually lose the things that make this game unique.